All right. All right. All right, who's ready? We're going to learn some Vim today. All right. So, quick forward. All right. Before I get started, I want to make sure that everyone has a shell open right away. Does anyone not have something open or not an instance of Vim open or need help getting an instance of Vim open? You should be able to go on your Unix command line, Linux command line, or you should be SSH'd in and just like open up Vim. In fact, we might do Vim. Do whatever floats your boat. So, anyways, welcome, Josh. All right. So, why is Vim important to know? I mean, you already made up your mind to come, but it's also important to understand the following. First thing, could I live without it? Easily. Is it useful? Hell yeah. I mean, you can also use it to just like get ahead in CSE 230 and like later classes. It's petty, I know. But also on top of that, there's a beautiful Stack Overflow where someone claimed how they brought up how Vim is kind of guaranteed to exist on all Unix systems. I'm getting a direct quote here. And it kind of exists on most Linux ones as well. And that kind of broad coverage makes learning worth it. So it's not like half as much of effort as you think it's going to be. I know there's a lot of like a lot of rumors about this being just this really steep climb. In fact, there's an XKCD about it, if you're familiar with that webcomic. But regardless, if you haven't already gone through the Vim tutorial, then we're going to cover all those options in like the first 10 minutes, and it's all just downhill from there. So, no worries. No, it's going to be easier. It's all downhill. That's the thing. People think it gets worse.
But that's what
Stop.
That's what downhill means.
Okay, so
Spiral. So you're saying it just like levels out.
a quote from Confucius. What's great about Vim is that your thinking is no longer interrupted by the mechanical process of getting your code on the screen. Trust me. All right. So if you've absolutely never touched Vim before, then welcome. You've come to the right place. And I'm truly honored if it is actually just your first time. So just a heads up, I'm going to be going over a lot in this talk. Based on my feedback from my Bash talk, there were a lot of people saying that it was kind of my biggest critique that I didn't bring enough for my seasoned kind of users. And so today, I'm not holding like much back. So if you're ever feeling overwhelmed, understand that I didn't even discover most of these later concepts until like months after I began using Vim. So you're going to have the luxury of me just like opening up a fire hose and just seeing whatever sticks. Let's see. So, at any point in the learning curve, you're going to be ready to just internalize maybe 10% more information. So, once more, don't feel bad that you like feel behind after I've explained virtually everything I know in just like a half of a year with Vim. But everyone here came to learn Vim, or see me, I get it. So today I'm going to benefit everyone by doing just that. All right. And quickly, one last thing before I start. Who has not used Vim before? Raise your hand. I'm just curious. Okay. Hey. All right. Wonderful. And who here's done just the Vim tutorial? Out of curiosity, because that's actually a common thing. Awesome. So here, let me like get these memes off the screen. I prepared a lot of them for you guys. I'm a huge fan. Hopefully you'll become like this guy, too. I aspire to be that guy.
The only thing that you need are your glasses.
Precisely. You know. All right, that was just low on the last one. I love it so much. Okay, so let's open up a shell. Let's get started. So I want to open up a blank one. All right, so Vim. Here we go. In all its beauty. Question.
What if you don't have Vim installed?
If you don't, then stop using Windows.
I mean, most.
You can also have. There are cases where you won't have Vim, but you'll have V. So.
I don't think Vim is installed on OS X by default.
Yeah. In my example, I don't have V on my computer. It's hard linked to Vim.
You install the Xcode tools. They usually install things like that for you.
Precisely.
And if you do that, you only do it once and forget about it.
Everybody type Vim in a command line and tell us if it doesn't do that.
Loving this. All right. So,
Did everybody do that? Because if they can't open Vim, then we probably don't want to leave them in the dust.
I think we're good, Matt.
All right.
So, once you open up Vim, I'm going to start with a quick crash course to kind of eliminate all the rumors. So, the first thing you need to do is just press the key for I. That stands for insert. And what that does is it enters insert mode, From here you can enter any text like you would in any simple text editor. I mean, you might not be able to use backspace right away, but like you'd expect, depending on your configuration, we'll fix that later, though. So just look ahead to that. And as soon as you're done making edits, you exit insert mode using escape or Control-C. What's up?
What's the default
Question.
mode in Vim? Default mode.
The default mode is this kind of blank command mode. And so we get out of that by pressing I and going insert mode. You can kind of see, thanks to my obnoxiously large cursor, this kind of insert thing at the bottom. That represents what mode we're in. So I'm going to Control-C out because, so I got to be interactive. So I just type something, and then I escape out of it using Control-C or escape. And now there's only one other thing we need to do, and that's to kind of save our file. We need to write to it, we need to quit, or both. So if at any point you feel scared and would like to just get away from all of that, then just a quick reminder, just escape or Control-C. It'll always save you. So now that we want to write or quit, you just type colon, and you'll see down here at the bottom left that kind of opens up this kind of command interface. And then just type simply WQ, which is the equivalent of write quit. You also just do W just for write, is the equivalent of saving a file, or just Q for quit because you don't want to make changes. And the only thing to note here is sometimes Vim will yell at you, hopefully in this case, that if you've actually made changes and you're trying to quit, it tries to have your back. And so in that case, if you really want to ignore all those changes, then just do a Q with an exclamation point, and you'll get out of there. So now that we're back in, let's see what else. So that's all of it. Seriously, congratulations. You know everything there is to know about Vim, just as you would any other text editor. Maybe the mouse is disabled and pasting isn't working as you would expect, but you're about to learn why you didn't really need that mouse in the first place. And everything you learn in Vim from here on out will only make you faster. Question?
Is there another type of, instead of using eyes, there's another...
There are plenty of commands, and we'll go over that. Like everything in Vim, there is arguably too many commands to do similar things. So, yeah, we'll go over those in a second. So, now we're getting really started. So, about modes. Notice how we went into insert mode. In other editors, you just open them up and start typing, but Vim's more powerful than that. You should think of every single key on your keyboard as sort of a function that operates on bodies of text. If you just start jamming on your keyboard, then don't be surprised when a few keys end up deleting 300 lines of text. This is mostly why everyone who hasn't learned Vim is so scared, or it's so. Whenever you're in doubt, just again escape, Control-C, and you'll be safe. So the first mode we're going to learn about officially, command mode. This is the default mode that you're in whenever you open a file and or have escaped from any of the other modes. And that may seem to make no sense since insert mode should be the default, but get this, it's extremely efficient at maneuvering text. This is the place where you can enter all those neat little keyboard functions you're about to learn, and like magic, they'll execute. And aside from that, there really aren't that many modes. There are a couple of special cases we'll look at later, but the only other one you need to know now is something you can insert by pressing just, here, let me type something again. The only one you can enter is by pressing V to enter visual mode, and that, you can see here at the bottom left I'm in visual mode. That's something where once you start moving around, it immediately starts selecting text. In fact, I just got an even better idea. I'm going to immediately open up a body of text, so the Vim tutorial. Yeah, so if I go into visual mode, like I'm in now, every time I move around, I'm constantly going to be selecting text. And that's really what it's useful for. But again, this should be thought of as a subset of command mode. It's not anything like insert. So, aside from that, like many of the other commands we're going to go over, there are cool little variations that handle kind of other use cases. For example, capital V, we'll try that right now, is if you type capital V in command mode, you'll go into visual mode, but this time it only highlights an entire line and it ignores that. And likewise, there's also another one for control V, which is visual block mode. And you can think of that as, here, let's go right here. That's something that you would use to kind of highlight like a table. That's what that's really useful for, but it kind of preserves your column. Again, control C to get out of that. So those are the basics to the modes. And I am immediately realizing that I'm going to have a lot of text or lots of commands that I'm going to go over. And if you want to reference at any point, I actually have a very thorough notes section in a GitHub repo. So I'll send you, I'm not sure exactly when, I don't want to do it right away, but because. No, I think I'll end up like giving you it right away, just so you can follow along. But aside from that, let's see. I got it here. Yeah, it's at this link right here. I even made a short URL for it to make it easier on you guys. So go to here if you want to. Let's see. All right. Yeah. Anyways, all right, you guys have seen this. Let's see. We go on my own screen. All right. So, aside from that, we've gone over visual mode now. And lastly, let's just technically go over insert mode. And that's the one that you press I to enter. You know, it's the dead simple mode that, like, big surprise, you use whenever you want to add new text. Spend much more time outside of insert mode because I know you might think that you're only going to be entering text, but believe me, we'll get to the power of Vim really quickly. And in fact, this is a perfect time to learn, as Juan asked earlier, a couple of variations. So while you have I to enter insert mode at any point, you also have A, which stands for append, and that actually does the exact same thing, except it starts your cursor, it moves your cursor forward one. And now, once again, with the little variations, there are subtle things like instead of doing I, you do capital I, and that will automatically bring you to the first non-blank character of a line. Or if you do, say, capital A, then that will immediately do append, but at the very end of the line, which is really helpful for not having to scroll all the way over. So, again, reminder, do not get caught up on memorizing every single one of these I tell you. I'll leave you with some I pre-assembled a bunch of awesome cheat sheets and further reading sources, so check those at the bottom of my notes. When the time comes that you're feeling ready to return to them, you're feeling comfortable and you're ready to take on more, then go to those. Okay, so now we're about to get to the first bigger part. As you can actually see on the screen right here, this part, I really don't like this part. This is probably the hardest thing in Vim, unfortunately, and that is the arrow keys. So, as you can see on your keyboard, the keys H, J, K, and L, all adjacent to each other, those can be used like arrow keys. In fact, I think online here's a good image for you of right about here. You can use this kind of image as sort of a reference. These are your arrow keys that you're going to be using a lot of the time. In some cases, your actual default arrow keys won't. If you're lucky, your own arrow keys won't be working in Vim in your configuration, and you'll be forced to learn these. Question?
Why did they use the letters instead of arrows?
I honestly, okay. Why did they use I thought you asked why they chose those specific ones. They're meant to be. They use when you're learning Vim, a lot of people use the expression your home row, and that's the default middle row of your keyboard that your hands rest on. And that gets to a lot of the philosophy behind Vim, is that everything's really easy to get to. Note, you haven't been using your mouse at any point. You're not going to be using your arrow keys. It's one of those things that seems really trivial at first, but once you grow, you only realize the benefits of it after you learn it. So again, because this is kind of the toughest part of learning Vim, because you just kind of have to brute force this in your muscle memory, I've actually provided a great resource. Didn't use it, but I think this is awesome. I found this online game at vimadventures.com, and this is a great way for, if you're having trouble, to kind of give you can literally maneuver around this landscape using those HJKL keys. And so if you're really having trouble, I totally recommend you just trying this out and getting comfortable using those. It's a lot of fun, and you'll kind of trick yourself into learning it.
Regarding the question about why it's letters, on teletypes, which were like the computer terminals used when Vim was written, there literally were not arrow keys.
Okay. Interesting.
I suppose the home row argument would be why they chose HJKL as opposed to like last, which everybody already knows and is intuitive. But yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Back to my thing. Okay. So maneuvering text again. That's it. So HJKL, those are your arrow keys. But, and you're immediately going to see, this is why we have the command mode. There are more efficient ways to move around words. So, let's see. Yeah, there's good news. Everything else we'll learn after this point will begin to replace your need to move using those one character at a time. So the next two I'm going to go over are 0 and the $sign. 0 will, here, let me go on to here. 0 will simply return your cursor to the beginning of the line you're at any moment, as well as $sign, which brings you to the end, conversely. Those are very simple, but a little bit more intricate now, or might not be super intuitive, are 3 characters, W, E, and B. So W and E together, so you can think of B as, B stands for back, whereas I'm assuming W stands for word and E stands for end. So you guys take a note of where my cursor is right now. If I type E, that will skip me to the end of the word. And likewise, W is meant to be the slight other option, which brings you to the beginning of the word. So like if I keep pressing W, you can see it keeps hopping to the beginning of words. And if I use B, it will bring me back. Likewise, there's W, but here's E, and then it'll constantly hop me to the end of words. It seems I know at first it seems like why, but eventually this might even replace your HJKL as you're trying to hop around text. And it's the very first thing you should do to replace those keys and become a little bit more efficient. Now it's worth mentioning something called count in Vim, which is very powerful too. I also want to mention it now because I'm not going to touch on it for a little bit, but you should know it from the very beginning, and that is most commands you learn, they can be given a count, which means you can enter a number and that will multiply the actions of that. So here, if I press, so just like how B goes backwards, if I press 4 and then B, then that will hop me back likewise. In fact, I'll even quickly add an option. So let's see. So 4. Okay. I just quickly added an option so you guys, some Vim commands are like combinations. So I just added an option. So like right down here, you can see what I've pre-typed. See, I've got a 4 there, and I'll press like B one more time, and you can see my cursor back. So next, search. This is actually my favorite way of quickly maneuvering through a file I just opened. The first one is I'm not sure exactly the /. So here I'll go I'll open up a bunch of lines. It's this character right here. So what happens is let's see, you see the word cursor right here? What happens is if I just type this /, you'll see my cursor return here to the bottom. That means it's about to accept a query. And if I type in cursor and hit enter, it takes me to that, right? Later on, we're also going to turn on a super cool option which highlights your search results, so it's easier to see where your cursor is and kind of look at all of the results. But aside from that, there's only one other, and that is it's the complete inverse, which is the question mark character, and it's the exact same thing except flipped. So notice here, let me delete that. So notice how I've gotten a head here. If I do question mark cursor, then it will bring me back. And only one other thing to note, I'm trying to think of an example here on the page. nothing super easy to see, but let's say I type in like TWAW. So A B C B D B E B, and so if I go to the beginning of that line and I search for the B, and it goes to 1, then while I'm in that, like while it still like has that search kind of up, if I press N, it'll immediately bring me to the next result of that. And likewise, a capital N will take me backwards through that list. And that also is flipped when you do the question mark. So let's see, what else? Yeah, so search can be a great way to get across text, and but that's about like all you need for basic commands. Aside from that, we'll just go through a couple quick, really simple ones, really like obvious ones. Like at any point wherever you are, if you just press X, that'll delete the word under your cursor. I'll just like spam it here. Very simple. And interestingly enough, and yeah, then there's P for paste. So whatever character I just deleted, in that case I deleted a B. Here, I'll even go to this O right here and move. If I just like get rid of that, go down a line, I press P for paste, then it'll paste that, right? Likewise, there's also capital P, which pastes before. I'm trying to think of an example. If I just go to up and like a couple words over and paste before with a capital P, it goes before the cursor, right? Subtle differences. So, I know what you're thinking. How do we copy entire words without our mouse? And I want to save that for just a couple minutes right after I finish a couple more of these commands, because I'm going to bring up text objects, and that's what's so perfect for copying and deleting and cutting all of these different kinds of bys of text. So one last quick note, you never actually delete something. Think of these as cuts. Every time you delete, think of it as a cut. Because technically they load into registers such that you can access the last 10 deletions at any time. So once again, so we'll get to that later. And also back to count, just a quick story from my CSE 3020 class. Just this last week, we were using Vim in class to kind of work with assembly in class. And if you don't know what that is, think of it simply as kind of code that manipulates addresses and values at kind of the binary level. Messy, I know. Anyways, I wanted to make the computer stall for a full second in assembly. So, processors probably clock in at about 10 trillion ticks per second. That could be totally off, but that was my first thought. So I simply thought, okay, time to get to work. So here we've got, I'm not even going to do it on this computer, but I simply thought, I got to copy the line of assembly code that stands for no operation and is just a pause and kind of paste it with a simple 1 with like 9 or 10 zeros and just press P. It didn't do it. It was hung. In fact, I remoted in from a different, I remoted in from somewhere else and noticed that I was taking up 50% of the CPU usage on like a server rack. The server rack that is north.cse.msu.edu. So don't worry, I was able to go in and kill the process manually. My child, it was a tough moment, but I got through it. And speaking of mistakes, undo, right? So, next key is U, which simply stands for undo. No matter what you've done here, let's say I delete this line, and I want to undo that, U. It's back. And also, on the converse, let's say I want to redo that, Control R, right? So, some simple commands. Also, here's a couple of more cool ones, because why not? There's also, let's go to a line here. Let's go down a little bit over. So there's the letter R, which is kind of like X. It only deals with the character under the cursor. So if I type R, Y, it will delete that and replace it with just that character that I typed in. And an interesting twist on that is you can also do capital R, which does the same thing, except it continues to overwrite as you continue to type in. And kind of works like insert mode, except, yeah, you're only overwriting. And speaking of insert mode, 2 more random cool ones just to know. is if you press O, that'll open up a new line below where you are, and also put you in insert mode. And if you do capital O, same thing except the line before. So yeah. All right. So we just went over some basic commands and maneuvering text with kind of these motions, but we've learned more than enough to kind of get us moving around text. Now it's time to get to shifting the window a little bit. Some of the most basic ones are, wrong window. If you just type GG, GG, that'll bring you to the first line of any document, I know. And if you do capital G, that'll bring you to the last line. And those are the big ones that really like anyone should eventually come to know. However, for the sake of organization, if you go back to my notes, I dumped all of the cool and lesser one knowns there. Again, another reminder, please don't try too hard to remember every single one of these at first glance. Come back when you're simply feeling ready, and I want you just to know that they exist. So, yeah. So likewise, the ones that I have on the list there for you to kind of like refer back to, capital H, M, and L, just think of those as high, mid, and low. They actually skip your cursor to either the top, middle, or bottom of the screen at any point. Just kind of interesting to know. And as for shifting the screen, we've got a couple of interesting ones here. I'm going to go to like somewhere in the middle of this document by going up 200 lines. So if I do Control B, that will scroll, I think of that as back. That will scroll up one page. There's also Control U, which is up just a half a page. And Control U is kind of useful for, like, going up a full page is a little too much. You can somewhat follow going up just half a page at a time once you get used to it. But something even better is just Control Y, which goes up a single line at a time. It just shifts your window. And also important to know, if my cursor is, say, in the middle of the line, and I do Control Y, then it's going to preserve that position. So, and likewise, Control E is what goes down. Control and Y and E are just kind of, I don't know what those stand for. Control D, down, and F, forward, those go the other way. So just think of it like back and forward, go a full page, up and down, go like a half page, and then just E and Y to scroll down the line. Again, there's a bunch of random ones that hopefully you'll come to know and love eventually. So, congratulations, you're officially a Vim user that knows as much as anyone who's finished the tutorial a couple times and feels, somewhat comfortable. And you should know also before we go forward that Vim has built-in help pages that cover any subject in serious depth. We'll cover them later, but for now, all you need to know is at any point, just like how we quit or write, if you just, wrong window, if you just do a colon and type in help, then that will immediately open them up, and you can kind of look through those on your own time. Again, we'll learn how to maneuver that in a little bit. So, yeah. All right. So now we're about to get into my favorite topic. This is a big moment. This is one of the first moments where, in just learning a very little, you'll become a very powerful user. So, how do I go about this? So in Vim, I gotta stop saying Vim all the time. In Vim, text is more than kind of a string of characters. Vim takes care to understand the subtle nuances between everything from a word to a word, like all caps word. That's the actual terminology they use, a word and an all caps word. I don't even think I know what that means. Of course I do, but what makes Vim text objects so powerful is that with each operator, text object, and or motion, those are the kind of terminology they use, that number of commands you can use, the number of commands you use kind of multiplies with each one you learn, because they can all be used in sort of combination. So here, I'm going to go through, again, this is great if you're on the GitHub and you can look through the list, because you've got a couple of operators. So D is the delete operator, Y is yank or copy, and then C is change. It's like delete, but it leaves you in insert mode, which is actually, you'll use that more often. And for the sake of this talk, I'm actually going to be using V, which I discovered just this morning, which is perfect for seeing exactly what you're operating over. So in a lot of working with text objects, you end up doing this combination of operator, and then either a motion or an object. What I mean, so what's a motion? A motion is everything I went over at the beginning. Those are the HJKL. Those are a full word. That's a full line. So, for example, let's think of a good thing. So, and they can really be used in conjunction. So, let's say I'm right here, where there are these parentheses. The parentheses are also a text object that Vim recognizes. So, if I'm anywhere within them and I want to get rid of that, then I would just do D for delete, and then I for in, and then open parenthesis. That will immediately clear out everything in there. This is really powerful for the most common use case is you're dealing with the parameters to a function, and you're just trying to you want to get rid of all those parameters and just redefine them. Then you can. I have an emulator up here to display just this concept. So let's say that I'm gonna actually zoom out of this a little bit. All right. So let's say I'm within these parentheses. Then just if I type C for change instead of delete, if I change in those parentheses, then that'll immediately drop me into insert mode and clear out everything within there. That's really great stuff. So let's escape out of that using escape. Okay. So again, delete, change, yank. So you see this kind of weird string that I've put within here. So let's say I yank in parentheses and hold on. Oh. Yeah, this is bugging up on me. Let's just go back to here. So once again, if I type something in here and I yank in parentheses, I can go down a line and just paste it out, and it's right there. And then, so I mean, I think that's what's beautiful about that is how intuitive it is. Now, what you're probably wondering now more is, okay, we get it. What about the objects themselves? What are common objects? When it comes to words in Vim, there's kind of this interesting semantic difference to be made. A word is just a string of characters that is alphanumeric, all like the alphabet, and if I remember correctly, the underscore. So here, visualize in. Visualize. Okay, so yeah, that constitutes a word. Let me find a bigger word. So that's an example of a word, several. Now, let's get to something weirder here where something has some kind of, some characters. So if I do visualize in, and then I do the actual, a capital W, that's the word, which in all caps means it includes all non-space characters, which is really great. I'm trying to think of a bunch of examples to go over, but I think that's fairly obvious. The other text objects are sentences. I wish I had an example here of multiple sentences. So let's just say, let's see, the dog, cat. Then I could just say delete in sentence, and it would take care of that entire object. Other ones are also here. Let me go down to this entire paragraph. There's also paragraphs. So let's see, visualize in paragraph. That's that entire paragraph that we could operate on. The only other ones, something really common would be, let's say, we have some tags in HTML. So let's see, is this mine? Okay. So yeah, so if we had just some simple, I thought I had a macro to automatically do that, but let's see. So yeah, if we have something within here, then likewise, it's because it's a blank thing of Vim. All right. Then likewise, we can actually here visualize in tag, VIT. That's that entire object within the tags. You can also do something interesting, which I don't use a lot, but I'll think of an example. You can also do, instead of, I always use you notice me always saying delete in word, delete in sentence, but you can also use an A, which if I remember correctly kind of means around, so visualize, let's do visualize a tag. Yeah, and that kind of gets also what encases it. So from here, you have so many new things in your tool belt. There are many more things you can look up, but this is like just the beginning of what makes Vim so cool. And also remember that we can use a count before text object or motion in order to multiply it. So some of like my really like common things to do, I like to like here I am within parentheses, so I like to change in parentheses. Undo. Awesome. So let's say I go to the parenthesis and I just need to like change in parentheses. That's a really common thing I do when I'm coding. Aside from that, what are the other ones? Oh yeah, let's append kind of a semicolon. You have semicolons at the end of your line a lot. So depending on where you are within that line, you would like say change CT and then semicolon, change till semicolon. That's a really common one. You notice that I use the T there. There's also another two kind of motions you can do. You have an F and a T, which are really similar. Like here, let me think of an example. You see this right before this ignore right here, that kind of forward slash. I can do F forward slash. It's like find, and it goes right to it. Well, likewise, if I did delete find df forward slash, it would delete everything up until there. Well, we can even do one more thing, which is dt forward slash, which is I think of as delete till. So that's another really common thing that you end up doing. And here, let's just like think of an example of something where I'd need a count. So there are a lot of A's on this line. So, or yeah, no, here. So if I type, or how about this capital I within this line? So if I do F capital I, it'll bring me to that first I. Let's go back. Let's say F2I. Or wait, hold on. Let's see. Oh, it's because it looks for the 2 character, right? 2F capital I. Right. So, awesome stuff. So, it's kind of this big topic that's really simple to go over, and this is again to me the very beginning of some of the really powerful stuff you can do with Vim. And now that we kind of understand text objects and we kind of have some operators in our toolbox, it's now the perfect time to learn how to repeat something we just did. So here's an example of here. I'm just gonna like go forward a couple lines. Here I am right here. Let's say I wanted to. Oh, I have the perfect example for this. That's why I was here. I'm gonna quit out of that list. All right. So here I have a make file, and it doesn't matter if you know what that is. In fact, I just recently found out what it was. Don't worry about that. All I want you to notice in here is I'm gonna even make it so you can. I'm gonna make Vim highlight those searches so you can see it. So let's say I search for 06. There's a lot of instances of 06 in this window. And so some common thing you might do is if I want to copy this make file and then reuse it from a next project, then I want to change all of those to 07. So what would I do? You could do it either way. You could either do, the way I would do it is I would do the capital R, which starts immediately overwriting. It's that kind of weird replace. And then I would type 07 and then quit out. Well, because it's search, we can just type N, go to the next one, and as we just learned, dot, do the same thing. And you could just spam that, and it's done. That's really powerful. There's even a better way to do that, which is using, you can kind of record your own macro in a register and call it a certain n number of times, and it'll automatically do it. But that's, I think, is a great example of how to use that, like repeat command. Again, that's the period. Okay, so what's that? Okay, so right now you guys just learned a lot, like more than some of my friends who use Vim know for like the months that they've been using it. And most users kind of go through the tutorial, wait a month, do it again a couple times, and spam the HJKL like keys when they're trying to move around all over the place. But you guys are better than that. And hopefully with time, you'll grow more comfortable using, at very least, just using W to constantly like move forward. Oh, this is a perfect example. Here, let me get rid of this highlighting. Okay, so here, notice that I have a bunch of these like project.support.c. Well, if I want to maneuver through this, I'm not going to just press E. I could more simply press capital E, and every time it would go across those entire words. Another example. So again, we just learned a lot, and if there's anything I want you to take away from this talk, it's to give Vim time. Learn a couple commands, be patient as you grow more comfortable with them, but don't stop there. So after a little time, that's precisely when you're ready to open up your mind to even more tips and tricks. So we're finally going to take a little bit of a breather from all those keyboard shortcuts and approach some of the more functional aspects behind the editor, aside from just moving around text. So we're going to do a quick 5-minute recess for people to stretch, get some food, kind of go to the bathroom. So yeah. Again, thanks for coming out, guys. There's another half to this talk. Don't worry, I'm not ending it here. But I'm also greedily going to grab some pizza.
There's no more pizza.
There's cheese bread though.
No.
It's your key that I have. Just forward it back. Wait, how do you do that?
As usual. It wasn't too bad.
Wait, you didn't believe that?
What project?
Yeah.
I mean, it's due on Thursday. I'll probably start it tomorrow on this video. Oh, yeah? I've already decided I'm going to do the thing.
I don't know which place. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He said example 16 and example 17.
Takes you to the beginning of the capital word, which means not void space. Whereas lowercase b just takes you to the beginning of letters.
The labs they're kind of weird. It's like they seem, most of them seem really easy and not very helpful. I was the ones I looked at.
Oh,
They're just like,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like they're more helpful for the exams and the projects.
Honestly, they seem like they're helpful for the project first.
What do you get the buy second for $25?
I don't know. I'm obviously not doing something.
Yeah.
Because.
I feel like I should miss it my thoughts. So and I also
Just takes you to the
fallback asleep.
It's an exclamation mark.
I said
So it takes you
two times.
But
I said two
lowercase, capital
Um,
T takes you to the beginning of
And then I just like half woke up and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
I'm not really impressed with your two. I actually said I'm trying to myself Saturday.
Yeah, well, I'm just remembering.
Yeah.
Totally don't take here. I'll pull up the short URL while everyone's waiting.
I'm doing something before it goes off and this stuff, so I have to wait all up.
And my brother, who I remember, is like, he's gone at like 7 or so.
People criticize me for letting people walk out, but I like to make them comfortable to feel the need to leave if they're not following one. Let's see. Oh, dude. All right. All right. All right. Getting the most out of Vim. So, we're going to start with options, something that some people would argue I touched on way too late. But I wanted to wait until you felt proficient in a lot of other things before we kind of touched on them. So, notice how, here, let me get my cursor in here. Notice how whenever we wanted to do a lot of stuff like talk directly to Vim. We would type in semicolon and do anything. Say write quit. Say give it some option. Anything. Well, there are lots of options, and in fact, the best way to go about learning these options is Googling other people's vimRCs. What's a vimRC? So a vimRC is something you should set in your home folder, and that will be all of your. It's literally the vimRC. When you open up a new instance of Vim, I imagine it runs through every single line of your vimRC and executes it as if they were loaded in one by one. So I even supplied, if you went to my short URL, which, do any of you guys need my short URL again? Honestly? No?
It's on the Facebook event page in case you didn't get it.
So here, let me go to this actual workshop. I've got it on my own computer. All right, so these are the kind of files that are in the project. And so generously, our President Bogdan gave me a copy of his vimRC beforehand. And I think it's a perfect example of some of the things you should be aware of and some of the really common things to have in your vimRC. The biggest that you always see is syntax enable or syntax on. And that turns on syntax highlighting, as you see right now. Aside from that, you can also the background. You can just do BG. You can do a dark or light. I'm not sure. There might be some other options. Google it. And also setting number, that gives you the line number. In case you guys are curious, I even gave a copy of my own vimRC for you guys to thoroughly kind of read through and have a bunch of these common options that you might need at any point. Some really common ones, right? We've also got, HL search, which will highlight your search results. Super awesome. I'm trying to think of any really critical ones. So, oh yeah, I prepared a vimRC just for you in case you didn't already have one. If you go to the project file or you go to the project page, and here are a couple of essentials that I think everyone should have. You can turn off number if you're not a fan of line numbers, and ruler. I left thorough comments so you guys can really understand what's going on. The only other extra thing I included, which I really love, is down here at the very bottom is these 4 things. And all they do is kind of remap some commands you kind of would type into the terminal in the first place. A really common thing, I don't know about other people, but a really common thing that happens to me is I try and write to a file or write quit. And when I do that, I end up, because you have to hold shift to do the colon, you end up accidentally capitalizing the W. And it ends up yelling at you and needing you to retype the whole thing again. The whole 2 characters, I know. Real big deal. But it remaps them for you, so if you ever do accidentally type that capital W, it'll take care of it for you. So take a look at that, and I urge you to take that and grow from there. Once again, I even included at the very top of mine a couple of someone else's vimRC that also points to a lot of other vimRCs that they've been inspired by, and I think it's a really great way for you to learn about some of the options available to you. So those are options. What else? Any other little things? Oh yeah. What's a good? Yeah, let's open back up this license. Why not? So, oh yeah, another quick tip when you're doing the colon is if you do a colon exclamation point, anything you type from here on out will be executed as if it's a shell command. So what would be something really common? List in a long format. I'm doing that because it's a lot of lines. So look, right there, just executed that, and I can read the output. What other things? Also, you can use, what's up?
How do you edit multiple files, with multiple windows?
That's literally about to come up. I'm super excited. That's a really fun part. There's only one other thing regarding to options, and that is it's really, for any of you that know rejects, regular expressions. Raise your hand if you know rejects or regular expressions. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of them before. All right, I know. I still don't know fully how they work, but regular expressions is there's this really simple format for parsing a lot of text In fact, I got yelled at by one of my colleagues for showing you how I used the dot command earlier, because that's something perfect for regex. Regex is something that you'd commonly use to, like, say, replace, the most common thing you use it for is replace all instances of this within the file. And from what I understand correctly, let's see the MIT at the top? That's a little out of place. So, ideally I should be able to do something like this syntax where I replace MIT with MSU and do that, That's an example of how you'd use it. I don't know how to use it globally properly because I'm not familiar with regular expressions, but just so you know, they're available to you. I even include on the notes to my talk a link to a really thorough resource to learn about them, even though I haven't looked through it fully myself. But I just wanted to give you guys as much information as possible. Next topic, buffers, windows, and tabs. My favorite part of getting into Vim, honestly. Let's start with definitions. So a buffer is simply, I'm not even sure what other word I could use besides buffer, but it's kind of an instance where you've opened up a file. And so that file has a buffer, and that's just kind of all the text to that file. Now, a window is a viewport on that buffer. So everything you've seen before, these are all, the window takes up the entire viewport. That's because I only have one window open. What if you want multiple files open? What if you're doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all at the same time because you're a front-end developer? You want multiple windows open or tabs at the same time. So we're going to get started with that. Again, lots of these commands are on my cheat sheet that I linked. I think it's the best thing. In fact, the cheat sheet I linked you guys, actually, there are a ton of sites that try and sell it as a poster board, but I got you that good image. So, okay. So we want to open up another file within here. So let me find. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna open up some of the vimRCs right next to each other. So what would be an example of something we could do? So we could do, the most common one is split. Notice down, look at the status line down at the bottom, and you would then do the next file within your computer, split. Right, now here we've got two windows open. I think actually this is kind of ugly. I'd prefer them to be side by side instead. So we're going to do that right now. Notice also what's really important is in the middle, you see one of those status lines is highlighted more than the other. That's your current window where your cursor's in. So we can run a command just on that window. So we're going to quit out of there. And we're going to reopen it up. But this time we're going to do vsplit, or I think just vs. Like when you're doing split, you can just do sp, I believe. But maybe vertical split, and then your .vim. Now they're open side by side. And there's some more subtle things you can do with the window, like everything to operate on the window, besides from commands, for the status line, would be, most of them, if not all of them, start with Control W. So Control W, let's do Control W, and then, here, let me cancel out of that. Here, you guys see my cursor? I'm going to go to the bottom here. So, these characters right here, those are the ones that you'll be kind of using. So, Control W, let's do that first one. Notice that subtle shift? Here, I'll do Control W 10 times. So, Control W 10, and then that left kind of arrow looking, left caret or whatever. See? This is how you kind of resize your window. And then on top of this, you can get a little carried away with this. So let's say I quit out of this. Get rid of that. You can also do, split your.vim, and then we'll do a vertical split with Bogdan's.vim. And here we have 3 open. Well, how do we maneuver between these windows? Control W, and then the HJKL keys, the basic arrow keys. And it's really intuitive. So Control W up, right? That goes there. Control W to the right, or L. You can see it highlighting the current window. On top of that, there's also one command I've actually never officially used, so this is an exciting moment. I'm in insert mode on there. Hold on. Control W and then R to rotate. Yeah. And then Control W R, capital R would rotate the other way. Yeah. So you'll have to do some more reading to see how it works on a ton of windows. Also, on the same topic, As for the command line, wait, what's going on? As for the command line, you can also, there's a flag that you can give to Vim, which would be Vim with an O flag, and let's say you give here.vim and Bogdan's.vim because he's the best, then it will automatically split them both horizontally. And now if I put out both of them, then if I do that with a capital O likewise, then it will by default open them split vertically, which is just a little quicker, like a little efficiency. Aside from that, let's see if there's anything else I want to talk about on this subject. Buffers, windows, tabs. Yes, marks. This is something I found out actually just within the week, which I feel really stupid for because I don't know. It's not something necessarily super useful for, but it's something that once you get kind of, you add it to your workflow, then you're suddenly going to become that much more efficient. Here, let me actually split. Yeah, I'm going to try and not make this too confusing, so I'm not going to open too many at one time. I'm going to vertical split my own personal vimrc. Then I'm going to make a mark. What's a mark for? A mark is something that records your exact place within a file, your column and row number, and it will save that. In fact, here, actually, I think I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. So at any point, you can look at your marks by typing in :marks, and here you can see a list of some common ones. I know it's kind of confusing, but look at the leftmost thing. Here's the example of marks themselves. And so what are available to you with marks are just like the A through Z, lowercase. You can use those as you would need. Those are kind of like your local marks, but your capital marks, your A through Z capitalized, those are global. So if I set a mark, a really useful mark is, as you can see, the capital V. That would be your vimrc. If for whatever reason you feel the need, or whatever file you're commonly needing to go to, you would just be able to access that mark right away. So how do we use marks? Here's a big file on the left. So we're going to go down 50 lines down. So I'll put my cursor in the middle here. So now we're going to set a mark by pressing M and then whatever you want to assign it to. So let's say this is the middle, so I want to do MM. Let's go to marks. I now have this kind of M mark right here, and it even saves like the middle. So let's see. Yeah, and then now I'm going to go back to the top. How do we access that mark and jump to that? You do the apostrophe. So apostrophe M takes you back to that line. Also, there's two different ways to do it. You can do apostrophe M, but you can also do backtick M, which will, here, I don't remember which. I'm pretty sure backtick M takes you to the exact column number as well, while just the normal apostrophe brings you just to the line number. It could be the other way around. I attached a resource to the help pages at the bottom of my notes, so you can double check that. And there's also a couple of new, more subtle things you can do with marks. Well, that's something really cool that I recently found out with. And likewise, you could do something like, I'm going to go to the bottom. And now I'm going to just do D and then apostrophe M. I just did an entire kind of, just like how we were learning with the text objects and operators earlier, I just did the same thing. I just deleted all the way to that mark. I'm going to quickly undo that. So now let's see, anything else about marks? No, that's all I had to say for buffers and windows. So tabs. Gotta love them. So, so here we have two windows open, but say we want to work on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in one tab, but we also have some server-side code. Well, we want to, and let's say we love Vim so much that we can't part with it. We need it open all the time. So you can actually type in :tab new, and boom, I'm in a new tab, completely separate. In order to maneuver between the tabs, unfortunately, there might be a quicker key mapping, or you can manually make one yourself, but tab P or tab N for previous or next is how you would navigate between those. So feel comfortable to use those. And what else? And then just tab close. That's really all there is to it. Yeah. And that's about how much I know about tabs because, yeah, there's only one use case I can think of to use it, is to have both front end code on one screen and back end on another, because really you should be using Windows as well, unless you really need all that space because you have more than 80 characters to a line. I don't know, but it's just good to know about. But yeah, so the next thing, the last big topic to me, and that is, I really hope I'm not missing something big as well, but registers. So here we go. We're going to quit out of here. So at any point, if you do : registers, you can see all of the registers you have at any moment. You can think of registers as clipboards. That's kind of the syntax or semantics that they use on the cheat sheet that I linked. But what's really cool about them is there's so many uses. You can use registers as macros. You could use registers as a temporary history. You might have noticed that I mentioned earlier in the talk how you don't have to worry about deleting, because at any moment you've got the last 10 available to you, the last 10 big deletes. Well, okay, so here, let me show you an example. If I delete this entire big recognizable line of code, by the way, I just realized I just used DD. That's a really common, I missed that. I missed DD. It doesn't literally follow a convention we used before, because it was like introduced, when they went from V to Vim, they literally introduced it because developers were doing delete $, to delete the whole line so often that they simply just made DD a really quick shortcut. And likewise also YY, that yanks the entire line too. Those are really common shortcuts. But yeah, so if I delete this entire line, or actually I've been deleting it a lot, so I'm going to do a new line. Set auto indent. All right, let's delete that line. And now let's look at my registers, or just look at reg. You can see it right there in the whatchamacallit, double quote 1. And likewise, every time you do another big delete, it shifts everything down or up one number, closer to register 9, which is the last one. Some other interesting things. So you've got those. Those are kind of your history registers, and you can yank from them. So just like we were dealing with text objects, we can re-yank from them or call them using the double quotes. So for example, if I type in here, let me show, that's show command, which will show everything I'm typing as is at the bottom of my screen. So double quote, and what was it actually in? I don't even remember. Reg, I think it was in 1. It's in 1. So now I want to go down here and I do quote 1, and then I want to paste it right above where I am. So capital P. I can repaste the contents back in. Aside from that, you can also record stuff to any of the lowercase a through z, uppercase a through z registers. In fact, I recommend if you ever think of some clever macro that you personally need all the time, which is the most common use case for them, then as you'll see here, let me vertical split my vimrc. Right here at the very bottom, I've got a macro that I'm really ashamed that didn't work at this talk, probably because I don't have my vimrc loaded on. But and that is a macro I made that would take a word and it would make it into HTML tags. So yeah, let's see. So so you can record it. You can record macros into registers. So how will we do that? So yeah, let's do that exact same one again. So let's say I want the macro to work like this. I open up a new line and I type in a word, HTML. I escape out. Now I want to immediately take that and just turn HTML tags into it. So I need to begin recording my inputs. So the Vim way of doing that is pressing Q. Notice that, oh yeah, and you also need to provide the variable or the register that you want to put it into. So let's say I want to put it into QH for HTML. Notice at the bottom left of my screen that we are recording, in fact. So now what I'm going to do is, let's see, how would I do this? So I want to do this in a really efficient way. So I'll do YB to yank all the way back. I would paste, undo. Let's see, capital P, paste before that. Oh, it's not working. All right, undo. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here, let me quit. You quit recording by pressing Q again. All right, let's try that one more time. So let's see, go to the end. So we're gonna record into H. So what will be a common way to do it? So we're gonna go to the beginning of our line. We're going to yank to the end of the word, Y-E. We're also going to, right here while we're here, immediately insert this character. We're gonna go capital A to append to the end of the line, add these, cancel out of that. We're also going to paste afterwards, and then append this. And then finally, we want to, how can I get between those two? I'll do a full back, and then I'll find, so F, that open caret. So I'm right there in the center. So I'm finished recording. Hopefully I got that right. I'd press Q to stop. Reg. And we can look at H. Hopefully that's my proper macro right there. So we're going to call that. So here, let's try a new line. So here we just made some HTML tags, and we want to place them apart, and we want to make a body tag now. So hopefully I should be able to do, to call a register like a macro, use the @ sign. So I'm going to do @H, and hopefully this works. Yes, it just worked. Awesome. And then likewise, I could then do this. And then you can do @, and then if you do 2 ats, that will play back the one you just played back, if that makes sense. It redoes that playback. And what's really great about the or the, what's great about this is also you can then chain these together super easily. If there's some like mundane task that you have to repeat a lot, but it's not, you can't just simply do it with a full like repeat, like a dot, because it's like it involves a couple of steps, then macros are the way to go. A really common example, I'm not sure if I can even, let's see if, I'm trying to think of, I don't want to pull it up, I'll just go back, but recover. Oh yeah, perfect, something to talk about. So, oh, I know why that happened, okay. So, all right, so what happens if your computer crashes? What happens if anything happens to you? That's a common thing, is not your computer crashing, but I'm trying to think of other examples. Really what I'm doing here is I'm suspending the process, but the point is you're mid-edit of a file. Well, Vim does a great job of keeping track of, it keeps what they call swap files. And so when you're in Bash, you can kind of see, it's kept as a dot file, so you don't see it, but you can see this dot, the 2 files I'm editing, dot swap. And so that's something that if you're doing something wrong or for whatever reason, you might, this is what I want to talk about. When you do have a swap file, that's what will happen when you say, the most common time you run into this problem is, I just thought of this, when you're editing a file and then you open up another terminal for whatever ungodly reason and try and edit the exact same file mid-edit. Or in my case, I background the process and try and re-edit it. Then let's say here, so bogdan.vim.swap is taken up. So I'm going to do this. Vim will just simply open up the simple prompt saying, hey, do you want to immediately recover the swap file? Which is, it's really simple to follow the options here at the bottom. Do you want to quit and just ignore it like nothing's happening? Press Q. Or if you want to access that copy and do something with it, then you just press R, and it's just going to tell you get ready, press enter, and you're there again. So that's just something that you guys also should be prepared for. So, I know it's a little side tangent, but swap files, yeah, important to know. Back to macros. So we just recorded a macro. I'm trying to think of what other things are useful for it. Yeah, but there was a really common example. My favorite example was, again, in CSE 320, when we had to do K-maps. Basically, we had a bunch of tables in text. And for whatever reason, I needed to fill certain rows and certain cells of, there were like 8 copies of the exact same table with slight differences. And I needed to refill certain cells of each table with the exact same thing. And so I recorded a macro, and then I would just move to each table and just replay back that macro. And all my friends were like super jealous when it took like 20 minutes just got brought down to like 20 seconds. So macros are super powerful, and it's harder to get more generalized macros. You usually end up just getting macros for when you quickly figure out like, oh crap, I need to repeat this a bunch of times. I need to carefully do a macro for it. And only one other word of advice: when you are doing macros, you have to be super careful about doing repeatable actions, right? No, that's here. How do I say this? A really dumb way to go about it would be if I did this HTML thing, and then when I started recording, I went back 4, right? That's not going to be repeatable across a bigger word, across something with differences in characters. So hopefully, actually, I'm going to test this out myself. Oh, yes. Let's try it. So if I do something HTML body dot head, just some random nonsense. And what if I do my HTML register? Interesting. But anyways, yeah, that just goes to show the importance of, obviously for my purposes, I didn't need to accommodate for all these weird characters, but I hope you guys get the point. I'm sure you guys do. So anything else about registers? Yeah. Okay, so pasting from and to registers. So here. This gets into another little interesting topic. What do you want to do if, for whatever reason, you want to paste a special character? You want to paste not anything on your keyboard. Let's say you run into this when you're trying to manually. You can also, by the way, go back into your registers and re-edit them. You can reload new stuff into them. So a common thing is when you want to edit a register and you want to add, for example, an escape character into that register manually. Well, there's this really interesting thing where when you're within insert mode, look at me right here, you can press Control X and it will bring you to this interesting new special mode, Control X mode. And a lot of these have to do with, this is a really interesting use case I only recently figured out, but it has to do, you can see there's all these other control characters, and depending on which one you pick next will be this whole new subset of things. I know it's not listed there, but for my purposes, these are all just a bunch of very, really interesting and niche things you might need to do for whatever reason. So in my reason, I need to paste the contents of a register. So I do Control R, and then from there, you can even see on the screen it's already starting to prepare to dump a register. And in my case, I had H. Oh, I pressed J. All right, let's do that one more time. So we're in insert mode, Control X, and then I'm looking for the Control R mode, and then H, and boom, it pasted it all right there. And then say I want to do one more thing, which is I want to paste an interesting character. Then if I remember this correctly, Control X, and then you would do something like Control V the character, I think. Control V. Nope, command completion. But a lot of really advanced options that you can look at the man pages for this stuff. Yeah. Other things. Yeah. So as for registers, there's also some really basic information on the cheat sheet too to go back to, and they refer to this really interesting one called the black hole register, which is the underscore register. Which actually, if you put anything into there for whatever reason, I have no idea why, it will get rid of it. It will just fall down a chute, and you'll never see it again. So, yeah, the black hole register. So, I'm trying to think of, did I even have an example of when I would need it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I just included, that's actually specifically why I think I included this meme for the black hole register. Now I think about it. So, other things. Yeah. I think I covered a lot when it comes to registers. Do any of you guys have any specific questions of something I might have missed with registers, or any other questions in general? Yeah.
Question in general: can you copy something outside of Vim and paste it in?
Outside of Vim and paste it in using your system clipboard.
Yes.
Right. So there's this really interesting thing. Okay, basically, yes, you can, and there are a couple ways of going about it. There is technically supposed to be the plus sign register, which if the OS integration gods smile upon you, then it will work. But even in my case, unfortunately, it hasn't, and you should never depend on it. So, I mean, to be fair, this might be just my environment, but actually, let's say let me find examples. Let's go to the browser here. If I actually just Command C, just copy like I normally would, The only important thing here is that you're in insert mode when you do Command V,
Oh.
right, or paste. So I'm not sure if that's universal and works across other machines, but that definitely works for me. Also, that also has to do with the paste option. There's this interesting thing. I actually am not 100% sure on this myself, but oftentimes whenever you go to paste something, say multiple lines of Stack Overflow code, which you should never do, then you run into cases where you have a lot of stuff that's pre-indented for you. And if you try and just paste that regularly, then Vim will just get really nasty on you and try and be smart and indent it, depending on what options you have set up in your vimrc. So a lot of times it'd be smarter for you to set paste. So Vim's prepared to paste, and then Command V. Oh, I pressed semicolon. Yeah, let me just enter. Perfect. Okay, pattern not found. So yeah. Any other questions? I think this is a really good time for you guys to ask any questions, because yeah.
Just a note on the pacing thing.
Yeah.
I think on Linux the equivalent command is Control Shift V.
Okay.
Because on the
Shift
back using
insert
yeah.
and copy would be the analogous control insert. Fun fact, a lot of the time on Linux systems, if you've got an X server, you actually have several different clipboards. So sometimes it's the plus register Steven mentioned, other times it's the star register, and other times still, God's help you, there's nothing that you can do.
Yeah.
Also, have fun trying to copy something in Vim onto your clipboard when your Vim is on a remote machine.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, I usually try and if I'm on a remote machine, I usually depend on basically using my arrow to copy that text.
Yeah, if you have mouse mode on, that will turn on visual mode, in which case you hold down shift and then you click and drag, and that will allow you to select that way.
Also,
Linux users are crazy. We're massive.
also something along that line of thought is, if for whatever reason you're trying to, something that I do is when I need to copy an entire project for whatever reason and need to put it into a different format. So doing exactly that, copying all my code, make sure you turn off number and copy it then. Also, don't have multiple windows open, because if you then try and copy everything in this window, it's going to try and grab everything like that. Also, you remind me of one thing I didn't cover, and that is when it comes to options. Yeah, I mentioned some options, but what you can do with them. Usually if you set and then an option name, that will set it true, that will set it. But if you wanted to turn it off, say for example, I have, I'm trying to think of a common one. Let's see. Yeah, so number. Yeah, exactly. So if I had number, how I'd turn that off is just simply by setting no before it. No number. And that'll get rid of it. There's also some other interesting things you can do, like accessing it as a variable. If I remember correctly, I'm not sure if something like echo and number would work. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a 0 because the number is turned off. So, yeah. That's so I think I figured up registers, unless you guys have any other questions. Aside from that, the only other topic to touch on that I'm really aware of is really expanding Vim with plugins. And I don't even know how I feel about this. It's not my expertise, that's for sure. I actually don't use any. I do have a couple to recommend if you want to look into them. But yeah, many people do go on to find plugins that fit their needs. The most common one I've heard of is NerdTree. And that's kind of from what I understand, a better file system interface. But there's a serious argument to be made over taking some serious time to master Vim before even going down that path. Plugins aren't your friend. Vim is. And you should take the time to really take advantage of, its more powerful features. I linked an excellent article below in my notes. It's called Stop the Vim Configuration Madness, just regarding that. So, yeah. And it essentially provided the argument that take your time to learn Vim. Stop trying to customize it. You can probably figure out how to do it regardless. But if you still are going to go down that path, the only kind of plugins that I have seen that seem kind of useful for are ones that expand Vim's current definition of text objects. So I'm trying to think of. I honestly can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but some like interesting like. Yeah, it would have to do if you were working with a specific language and you wanted to like there's paragraphs, but yeah, but new text objects. That's as simple. I can't think of an example right now. And maybe like more motions or more operators. Like I've seen, there's one called surround, which would, if there's the HTML, actually we can test this out right now. If I go up to these HTML tags up here, in fact, fun fact for just like quickly scrolling around, random thing that I do, it's probably not optimal, but because I like doing quick motions, I find it really easy if I want to jump a lot, to just like simply do like, to quickly just do a 1-2 down, or like a 2-3 depending on like how far I want to go, just for quick skipping. Aside from that, just using the search, like I want to get back to auto indent, so I type in auto I, and then I would jump, then I'd be there, right? Everything is just getting more comfortable quickly running around text, and the better you get at that, the significantly better of a Vim user you're going to become. So, aside from that, just some final words. There are some alternative editors out there. We got Microsoft Word, right? Seriously though, I use Vim for IAH papers. Not gonna lie, like I just like line each sentence out, and then I like paste it into like Microsoft Word when I'm done.
That's actually awful though.
You would think.
No, I wouldn't know.
Because
Vim has new lines, assuming it's a .txt.
Trying to repaste it in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the backspace at the end of every line. Plus,
it worked beautifully in my environment. I got lucky, I guess. But yeah. Aside from that, there is a case to be made for other editors. Like, I mean, maybe V, maybe Emacs. No, I'm kidding. Seriously. As for the kind of text editor war, I don't have much to say on that. I started off using Emacs, in fact, and I'm not necessarily an expert on that. From what I can tell, that Emacs is it has so much more to offer than what I use it for. I just want a text editor to help me move around text and manipulate it, and that's why Vim's so great for me. But you should definitely look into that debate and find out which one might be best for you. Aside from that, thanks so much for coming out, guys. I couldn't admire you enough. I couldn't admire you enough for taking the time to give Vim your attention. Your text editor is something that you should grow with, and vice versa, it should grow with you as you do over the years. And for such a widely available and deceptively deep editor such as Vim, in a couple of months you're going to wonder how you ever edited without it. Even now I find myself wishing I could jump between words when writing a Facebook status. So we're always learning new things. And when it comes to Vim, you should never, never, never stop. Thanks again.